Good evening to all. Welcome to the second in the series of webinars on meeting the challenges of modern technology. What I'd like to discuss today is, good evening to all. Welcome. What I would like to discuss this evening is the Chinuch prerequisites. This is the only session that is specifically and pretty much completely Chinuch focused per se. This is not going to be a typical Chinuch webinar where we talk about what's with Chinuch, etc. There are many resources for that. What I would like to rather focus on are which aspects of Chinuch we need to strengthen in order to improve our chances of helping our children, our students, our mentees, our mechanochim, etc., to be successful in reaching their goals, in being safe with technology. And again, we're defining technology here as modern information and communications technology. Okay. I will be, speaking my piece. I'm open to questions. I would only ask that people should either type in their questions in the chat or on the YouTube live stream. If they want to orally ask their questions, please wait till the end of the stream, and I will be happy to answer anybody's questions. Okay. So the first thing that is really important to understand is a very classic pasuk that everybody talks about, and often we don't really think through what it really means, which is the classic pasuk about Chinuch, Chanoich lenar al pi darkei gam ki yaskin leisaser mimene. Now that sounds like a very simple thing, but as is always true, the language is very specific, very careful, and it really packs a punch. Okay. So the first thing to keep in mind, to notice, is that the pasuk is telling us what is our outcome. And our outcome is not that we got our child to do this thing or that thing today, yesterday, last week, next week, whatever. The pasuk is telling us that what we are trying to do is to help develop our child into a person that will stay on the right way even when we are not around. And that's why gam ki yaskin, we're not just not physically there in their house or whatever. We're not there. We're gone. This is, when they're already grandparents, right? And that kind of thing. So the idea is that we need to focus our chinuch on helping our children develop both the skills and the cheshik and the desire to do the right thing, to know how to do the right thing, how to figure out to do the right thing, and then actually do it. Okay. This is extremely important when you're dealing with the issues of technology, because one of the biggest challenges with modern technologies, information and communications technologies, is the sense of freedom, some of which is real, some of which is an illusion that it gives us. It does, and the truth is, these technologies do make it easier to do things. And it is surprisingly easy for somebody who is really thinking about it and wants to do this to go behind our parents' backs, behind the backs of our school, of our mechanchim, etc. So we need to focus on helping our kids understand what the right thing is, and to do it because it's the right thing, partly because we tell them so, but not because we can force them, but because they understand that when we tell them this is the zehu haderech, this is the right way, that it is the right way, and that they can make good enough decisions that even if they can't figure out what the right thing to do is, that they know enough to reach out for help, to turn for help, etc. Because the reality is that our kids, even aside from technology, kids can do a lot more than we give them credit for. And, especially when you're talking about even young children, much less children who are in their teens, marriageable age, etc. So we need to very, very strongly focus on developing in our children both the desire and the knowledge to do the right thing. Okay. But then the pasuk tells us, how do we do this, right? So the really interesting thing here, there are two really interesting things here. One is that if you give a look, the language is singular. In other words, the child, the child, not the children, the boys, the girls, the community, this, not plural, and not even a group, not a single group. Each child is an individual, is a different person, and you need to focus on that child as a person. The other thing is, it's darkai, his derech, not my derech, not the derech of the school, not the derech even of the community, which is a rather interesting thing. It doesn't. What's always fascinated me here is it doesn't even say derech hayosher. What is the right way? It's the derech of each child, because there's so many. It says that there are 12 paths. There were 12 sharim to the Beis Hamikdash. There are 12 paths for each shevet, right? Each child has their right path. I mean, obviously there are limits to everybody, and there are certain things that are right for everybody and wrong for everybody. But fundamentally, each child is different, and we have to do what's for that child. But not just that every child's different, but who is this about? Is it about me? Is it about my child? I don't like certain foods. Doesn't mean I shouldn't give them to my child, right? I like certain foods, but if my kid's allergic to them, then I can't give them those foods, right? The same thing is true in educating our children. We have to realize, I like to read. I have a cheshik for this type of work. Some people are more into askanas. Some people are more closed and, on a one-on-one private basis, etc. And each thing is legitimate as long as it's done in a Torah-dik way and l'shem shamayim. But even if it's not what I would have chosen or I would have been, it's a really, really crucial thing. And again, this is very, very important when dealing with these technologies, because one of the things that the technologies do is, again, it provides the sense of freedom. And it actually does provide a certain element of freedom, a certain amount of freedom. And for a child who feels that they're not being heard, that they're being forced into a mold that doesn't fit them. It's like if you're wearing shoes that don't fit, or there's a pebble in there, or it's a little too tight, right? What's the first thing you do when you walk into your house when you are wearing those shoes? You kick off your shoes because it's just so uncomfortable. The same thing, if a child is being forced in or pushed or nudged even into a road that is not theirs, they will want to kick it off, so to speak. Especially at the more we ignore what the child needs, and focus on what we think or want or need, whatever, the worse it gets, because there is a greater discomfort and also less likelihood of a child succeeding. And people want to succeed. So if a child feels that they're not being heard, they're just uncomfortable, they are not succeeding, you've just given them a huge incentive to look for a different path, for a different way. And honestly, the path of least resistance very often is the path of technology. And if a child is rebelling and getting into these technologies, the chances of things going very, very badly is very high. So we need to, when we are mechanech our children, we need to make sure that we are focusing on who they are, that they feel heard, that there's a chance for them to be successful, and that there's a sviva, a way that fits them so that they can be comfortable in it, and that's how they become grounded and go forward with it. So that's, you know, an overall Teredike thing. I just want to focus. It's important to reiterate something. Our control of our children is limited. Even when they're young, it is limited. There's only so much we can do to control our children, to ensure that they are doing what we want them to. So we need to really, again, realize that, you know, that we need to influence our children through the authority we carry, not through the force that we have, and realize that we need to influence them, not control them. There's a well-known story told about a Parish who decides that he is going to, as Farfallen, he grew up, you know, exposed to the world, et cetera, so he's not, you know, perfect Parish. But he has a child now, and his child is going to grow up. He's going to be the perfect Parish. He will have nothing to do with the Welt, et cetera, et cetera. And so his baby is born, and he moves the baby into a little room in the back of the shul, and mother gets to nurse the baby for 2 years. Once the baby turns 2 years old, he's a toddler. Mother doesn't get to see him anymore. He never sees a girl. He never sees a woman. He never sees a party. He lives in the back of the shul, and all he does is learn. All his father teaches him. He has a malamed. He never does anything but learn and be taught, whatever. And all goes well, and he has nothing to do with his life but learn, and he's a very bright child. So by 16 years old, he's mamish and Eloi, and he's wonderful. He's ready to get smicha. Except that the Rav is like, I'm not coming to your son. He's 16 years old. He's coming to me. So for the first time in his life, he walks out of the shul, and he's walking down the street with his father. And vavoy, what happens? They meet some girls. So they walk past the girls, and the Bacher turns to his father and says, Tata, was is das? Tata, what is this? And the father doesn't want to explain to him about girls. I mean, remember, this is supposed to be his holy parish. So he says, these are ducks. So the child is silent for a few minutes, and then he turns to his father and he says, Tata, kaif me a kachke. Father, buy me a kachke. Okay. Obviously, the story never happened, but the point here is that we think that we can structure everything just so, and if we do everything just so, and it's so right, etc., we will make our child be whatever it is that we want our child to be, what our ambition for our child is. And, you know, we're good parents. We want good things for our children. But this father, just like this mythical father, thought that he could raise a son who was no interest in girls, in or anything like that. Then the first time he sees a girl, he doesn't know what it is. He thinks it's a kachka, but somehow he knows he wants it, right? So I mean, obviously, like I said, the story never happened, but it speaks to the idea that there is only so much we can do to mold our children. And the more we recognize it, the more effect we have, because then we work with what our child is and not against it. And again, that keeps us from pushing them away from us. Okay. The other really, really big thing is that we need to be trustworthy to our children, to our students, etc. And trust comes up in many different facets. And this is really important because our children can check what we say. They can double check. And, if they're smart, and they'll figure out what's reliable and what's not. But sometimes they'll think they're checking us, and really the information that they get is not correct, is not accurate. We're right. So why will our children listen to us? Right? What will make our child listen to us rather than this other information that their friend at school told them, that somebody at work maybe told them when they're a little bit older, or that they found on the internet or on some app or some WhatsApp somebody sending around, or whatever it is? How do we ensure that our children listen to us and the appropriate role models that we are hoping to have them And that is about trustworthiness. So trustworthiness covers several issues. Okay. So the first issue is simply integrity. Okay. Your child needs to know that if you say this, you mean that. You believe that if you say that you will do something, you will actually do it. I mean, obviously, we are all human beings. Life happens. Sometimes you say, I will do this, and then we make a mistake. Life happens. You're going to go here on the car, doesn't start or whatever. Okay. But your children need to know that what you say is to the best of your ability is true, that you believe it. If you lie around your kids, if you shade the truth, if they hear you telling people that your spouse isn't home when they really are home, et cetera, your kids are going to know that you aren't always going to tell the truth if it doesn't suit you. And they're going to have no reason to believe that you will do otherwise when it comes to technology. It's really that simple. If your kids know that you do not tell the truth, then they have no reason to believe that you are telling the truth. If you are telling them to do something that you don't want them to do, they have reason. They can say, okay, mommy's saying that because she doesn't want to pay for whatever. Tati's saying that because he doesn't want his, he's saying it's bad for me, but really he's worried about, people are going to say whatever. Okay. Which leads to the second issue, your motives. Okay. Your children need to know that you care about them, and that when you say this is a bad thing for them, that this is the wrong thing, it's about them. Your child should never feel that my parents don't want me to do this, or they want me to do that because that's going to make them look good. Steht nicht done. This is prestigious. I want my kid in this school, not because it's the best school for my child, but because it's a chashuv school, right? This one doesn't want this shidduch because it's not chashuv enough. The parents don't have enough yichus, et cetera, et cetera. Kids see all this stuff, okay? And if they see that in other aspects, and again, then it comes back to technology, like, why do you not want me to have a cell phone? Because the Rebbitzin, who you're so impressed with, is going to turn up her nose. I don't care about the Rebbitzin. Why do you want me to have tag on my phone? Because all your friends are talking about tag like it's the latest status symbol. Why do I care about that? This is what a child is saying. And, if that's the reason, like, okay, so maybe I'm not going to embarrass you now, but I don't see anything wrong with phone. And the day that the child is making their own decisions, they're going to get a smartphone that's not filtered, that's not whatever, because they've never really taken on board the problems and the issues that you've been trying to talk to them about, because they think that you are talking to them about these things because of reasons that have nothing to do with the intrinsic problem, but because of other things. So when you're talking about, I'm saying this for your benefit, they need to know that that's really true. And that even when you don't say this is for your benefit, that this is really, that when you say, I don't want you to do this, it's because you don't want them to do something that is harmful to them, whether to their gashmis or their ruchnis. You don't want them to harm their neshama, but it's their neshama you're worried about, not what somebody is going to say, not whether you're going to get that better job, whether you're going to get, a win, whatever. They need to know that they can trust your motives when you talk to them. The last thing is they need to trust your competence. Okay. And that is tricky. That is actually very, very tricky, because, if you say, this is dangerous, your kids need to know that, no, this is not just mommy having conniptions. Okay. Or Tati is such a worrier. He worries about the craziest things. What, really? Who's going to do this thing that he said that people could do? Or your kid may say, they heard that if you use this filter, then you can't do any shopping. And who's your kid going to listen to this other source or to you? And even though, and your kid trusts you, they believe that you're trying to do the best thing for them, et cetera, but they're convinced that you have no idea what you're talking about. That's not useful. Okay. So the problem here is that you have to be really careful, because the way to convince your child that you're right isn't by never admitting that you could be wrong or that you don't know. Because if you admit that you're wrong, then when you say, I know that I'm right, your student, your mentee, whatever, when you admit that I'm not sure, I don't know, whatever, that means that when I am sure, I probably do have a reason to be sure. Okay, and this, by the way, is true all over the place. I was just having a conversation with somebody who is, for the first time in charge of technology at a nonprofit, and she's all bent out, worried about making a good impression and, impressing people with her competence. And she feels like she always has to have an answer on the spot. And I said to her, I said, it's fine for you to say, I'll get back to you. Because sensible people understand that you cannot always have the answer to every question on the spot. So better that you say, I'll get back to you, and then do your research and come back to them. Because then they know that when you say, I'm confident in my answer, that you actually have a reason to be confident in your answer, that you will admit when you might be wrong, and that you'll take the time to do the research. Okay. And it's not just about technology. Okay. It's like, most people understand that it's okay to ask the doctor when you have a medical question, right? And by the same token, it's okay to ask the lawyer. It doesn't make you look like a klutz. Doesn't make you look like you don't know what you're talking about. It means, okay, this is what I think the law is, but let's ask the lawyer. I think that looks like impetiga, but maybe I'm wrong. Let's ask the doctor. That's fine, right? The same thing should happen in halacha, right? You should be willing to ask the Rav. It's okay. Being willing to ask the Rav doesn't mean that you don't know what you're talking about, but you know what your limits are. And that's a lot safer and a lot more confidence inspiring than the person who never asks. And by the same token, with technology, make sure you know what you're talking about. And since for most people, like, I live and breathe technology, it's my job and it's something I'm interested in on a personal level. So 9 times out of 10, when somebody asks me a question, I can give them something of an answer without having to do research. And still and all, there are times when I need to go ask other people and do research and whatever, because there is no way to have the answer to everything. It's just not humanly possible, right? So and by the way, this is true not just in technology, right? The best doctors are just as likely to say, I need to do some research. The best, most of our halachic literature, the volumes and volumes and volumes of shaylos and shulas, right? Most of that stuff isn't things that individuals wrote to the Rav. This was a letter from one Rav to another Rav because I'm stuck. I need some help. I need somebody to talk this through. I need to think this through. Maybe this is an area I don't know enough about, etc. And we have thousands, we literally have, hundreds and hundreds of years worth of volumes of shaylos and shulas where one Rav writes to a Rav who is greater than him or more expert in this area, saying, I have this situation. What do you think? Okay, so if some of the biggest names in our history felt able to ask a shayla, right? It's kind of like foolish for us to think that asking questions is what's going to make us look incompetent. That's not what makes us look incompetent. What makes us look incompetent is spouting incorrect stuff, doubling down when we're making a mistake. Again, every so often we're going to make a mistake. Somebody calls us in it, somebody brings up a good question, whatever. And it's fine to say, okay, let me get back to you, check it out. And if you actually made a mistake, you admit you made a mistake, and okay, weitergegangen. This is really, really very, very important, because again, if you have a track record of saying things that aren't correct, again, your kids aren't going to listen to you. And so that's one piece of it. Now, the other thing is, there's this tendency to say, oh, our kids automatically know better than us. Oh, they're digital natives, whatever, all this other stuff, especially if you're of my cohort, but even younger people say the kids know better, any kid can, whatever. And it really isn't that way. however, it is possible that your kid's going to come to you with good questions or with challenges or with issues. And my piece of advice always to everyone is have a network, have at least one person you can go to with questions, and have some backups, preferably, that you can go to and ask a question. Your kid comes and says, your spouse comes and says, your friend comes and says, I heard that this thing is an issue, or this thing is not an issue, that they cannot do whatever. And you may not have the answer. I mean, how would you know, right? But you need to have somebody who you can trust. And I'm going to say that if it's somebody you have to pay, that's part of, it's just like, you pay your doctor, you pay your lawyer, you have to be willing. That's just like part of the budget. And this, by the way, is true whether or not you have a given technology. Because and the fact that you're willing to pay if necessary is in and of itself a lesson in chinuch. Because what we spend our time and money on is an indicator in what we value. Okay. And being willing to expend resources, time, money, effort to get the answers right tells us, A, that we value getting the answers right. B, it tells us that we value doing it right, and that we're willing to, take the resources and sometimes the embarrassment of dealing with, even a somewhat costly, to make sure that it is right. And this, and again, it creates credibility, but it also says it's a lesson in when I talk to my kids about, this is really important, they know that I mean it, because I was willing to, to kind of put my money where my mouth is, so to speak. I remember many years ago when one of my kids was, an adolescent, and we went shopping for clothes, and there was a style that was really, really in style, and it just really didn't suit her. She looked terrible in it. She found a dress, and it was all the in style, whatever. And we found another outfit that really looked much better on her. The other outfit was twice the price, and she tried on this one. She really wanted to get it. And I was like, sweetheart, that dress really doesn't look good on you. And again, it wasn't a sneeze issue. It just like really, really looked terrible on her. I said, that really doesn't look good on you. And, I said, do you not like the other outfit? If you don't like that outfit, we'll get you another one. She goes, no, I like the other outfit, but this is more stylish. I said, but it doesn't, do you really want to wear something that's stylish, doesn't look good on you? And she's like, do you really think it doesn't look good on me? And I said, look at the prices. And that was the end of that conversation, because the other outfit that wasn't as stylish was literally almost twice the price of the more stylish dress. And it was just kind of like, by doing, like, in that case, the fact that I was willing to spend so much more on the other dress said to her that, yeah, I really, really mean it, because if it had been the other way, it would have been the truth. But there might have been a chash in her mind that I really wanted to get the less expensive dress because it's less expensive, not because it looks better. But when you're saying, I'd rather pay the extra money, that says, okay, whatever other motives you may have, it's not because it's, cheaper or more convenient for you, et cetera, et cetera. So, that's just like a bit of an additional piece in the credibility range. I'm not saying that you have to spend tons and tons of money in order to be credible. I'm just saying that doing so when it makes sense is a signal to your child that, yes, I am serious about this. I am serious about finding the correct answers and doing the right thing. And I'm willing to spend time, effort, and money, because for each person, which of those things is most important, what's their currency, so to speak, is the way, you signal importance. So all of this is really, really important. Okay, so any questions? Okay. So does not look like we have a big crowd, and it does not look like we have a lot of questions. So I'm just gonna finish off by saying that, we've been talking about chinuch. A lot of this stuff is, for applies to ourselves also. But the bottom line is, in terms of chinuch, we're going to talk in the next weeks about like what it is, what are the things that you need to focus on. But no matter what you focus on, being understanding that we cannot force our children to be whatever we want them to be, and that we have to develop authority rather than force. And the way to do, and a major component of doing that is by being trustworthy on all of these dimensions. We need to show the integrity. We need our children to trust that when we talk about what we want them to do or not do, that it's for their good, it's for not for other external reasons. And we need our children to be able to trust that when we say this thing, it is actually correct, that it's not going to blow up in their face, etc. And it crops up a lot. It crops up a lot. I see this happen a lot where I get people saying, "Oh, well, so and so told me that if I put a filter, then you can't do these things, or those filters are just like ridiculously easy to crack and whatever." And sometimes it's true, but sometimes it's not. And you need to be able to, respond in a way that is credible. Otherwise, your kids will go elsewhere. And not just about the technologies, but also, what you don't want is your kids to run circles around you, saying, "Oh, well, if you use this filter, then you're not going to be able to go shopping," and you get like, you don't know the answer, and you just get all whatever. And now your kids know that they can do whatever they want because you don't really know what's going on. Whereas if you don't know the answer, you say, let me check that out. I'm not so sure that's true. Let me talk to, my tech guy or my tech gal, whatever. But, let me talk to my tech person and let's see, what the truth is and, how we deal with it. Then at least your kids know that you may not know the answers, but you will find them. And that creates a very, very different dynamic. It's far more credible, far more authoritative. And that is really the key thing that we need to be looking at if we want to be able to influence our kids. Okay, last call for questions. Okay, so I will be signing off. We will be having our next session next week, same time, 8:30, and Monday p.m. Now, next week, I am going to be talking about some of the fundamental issues that we need to teach our children, but also that we need to deal with and kind of get ourselves in a mindset that are very, very fundamental for us to interface and deal with technology in a safe and sane manner. And when I say safe, I mean safe beruchnius. You want to safeguard your children's, you want to safeguard your own neshama, and as well physically. And you don't want to get cheated, you don't want to get somebody stealing your data, etc., etc. So that is what we will be doing next week, same time, same place, as I say.